Hello and welcome to the India Energy Hour. I am Sandeep Pai, a former journalist with Hindustan Times and now an energy researcher at the University of British Columbia.
And I'm Shreya Jai, journalist with Business Standard newspaper in Delhi, writing on the energy sector.
Together, we are really excited to co-host a new podcast on India's energy transition, the India Energy Hour. This podcast is hosted by 101 Reporters, an innovative news agency that connects grassroots reporters and media houses to bring out untold stories. The show is produced by Tejas Dayan and Sagar of 101 Reporters.
In this podcast, we want to unpack and document India's energy transition. We will interview leading energy, development, and climate experts from academia, civil society, and the government. Through these interviews, we will explore the most pressing hurdles and promising opportunities in the energy transition unfolding in India. We will examine the role of government, finance, social justice, and science. Over time, we will feature other countries of the global south as well.
As India goes into the festive season with a rebound in the economy post-COVID second wave, the country is facing a power crisis with more than 80% of thermal power plants in the country facing a coal shortage. Many states have warned their customers of power shortage, and there is considerable panic anticipating these power cuts. But how did the crisis start? Who is responsible for it? But more importantly, how should the country's planners resolve the issue and avoid a repeat? To understand these issues, we are publishing a special episode exclusively focusing on the power and coal crisis in India. In this episode, Sandeep is interviewing Anupam Chatterjee, energy journalist at Financial Express newspaper, along with the India Energy Hour co-host Shreya Jai, energy journalist with Business Standard. Both Anupam and Shreya have been reporting on this coal and power crisis and are considered experienced writers on the subject. Welcome, Anupam, to the India Energy Hour. I'm really excited to have you. And welcome, Shreya, to the India Energy Hour, this time as an interviewee rather than a co host. So, welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Okay. So, let's start. We have this so called coal crisis and looming power crisis going on. So this episode, we really want to cover like the who's, the when, the what's of that crisis. So let's start with you, Anupam. Right? Can you explain why India is facing a power crisis resulting from coal shortage? Also, can you broadly tell us when did the crisis start and what are the key reasons?
Right. So this crisis or coal shortage, to be more precise, I guess, it is a recurring phenomenon that happens every year after the monsoons. The fundamental is that during the monsoons, the mines get flooded and the coal supplies become an issue because the mines are located in the interiors, and transportation, the roadways are not they're not the best of the infrastructure, so that becomes an issue. So every year after the monsoons, there is a shortage. This year the monsoons were extended, one, and the power plants did not stock up as they should have done before the monsoons. So it finally, when power demand increased, and quite a lot actually, the power demand was pretty high, and most of the demand was met by coal. So the stocks at the power plants depleted, which resulted in power plants running out of coal. And the monsoon took a little longer to go away, so that prevented Coal India from resuming supply. So that is broadly the reason why it happened. When did it begin? So immediate impact is felt now. The signs were there since mid-August, the end of August, but technically it started before the monsoons when the power plants did not stock up. So in spite of Coal India having 100 million tons of coal stock at their mines, apparently that's what they claimed. The power plants evidently did not have ample inventory at their end. So in a nutshell, that is the reason why which led to the current situation.
That's great. One quick follow up on that. So, what is the kind of deficit are we talking about? Okay, do you have some numbers at the top of your head to explain, like either the deficit at the power plant level, or if there's Coal India claims that they don't have deficit in terms of supply. So, what is the deficit we're talking about?
So across the country, power plants have around 7.2 or 7.3 million tons of coal at their end, which is sufficient for them on an average for 4 days. Now, ideally, they should stock up for 15 days, 20 days, depending on the distance from the mines, coal mines. So the longer the distance, the larger the stock should be. But we are not seeing that. So 7.3 million ton is not a great figure, but at the same time, it's not a figure to get afraid of, to be very afraid of, because it's not like that they have 7.3 million ton and after 4 days they're going to run short of coal, because it's a rolling stock and every day the train wagons are coming and supplying and replenishing the stock. But yeah, the pace could have been more. So it's like a hand to mouth situation, which should be avoided. But yeah, it's not that there is the looming crisis and the power plants will suddenly stop operating.
Excellent. So, moving on to Shreya. So, I mean, like Anupam was explaining, what I gauge is that it is more of a coordination issue. I mean, of course, monsoon has impacted, but it's more of a coordination issue between, Coal India's supply versus power plants stocking up. But we also hear or see in headlines, and people are often referring to, is that the international coal prices, the increase in international coal prices might have some impact. Can you explain if international coal price increase has resulted or has contributed to the so-called crisis?
Thanks, Sandeep. What I think is that whatever price increase has happened globally has a very little bearing. So there are two things that have happened. Gas prices have shot up across globe. Europe has seen a price increase of 400%, as I saw in some reports. Electricity prices have shot up. Second is this coal price increase that has happened. The imported coal costs have gone up. There's a Reuters report which says that since August till today, there's an increase in the price of imported coal on India's ports by 40%. So that's huge. But the thing is that India doesn't have that much capacity which runs on imported coal. We have close to 200 gigawatt of total thermal power capacity. Out of that, there is 89 gigawatt that runs on imported coal. And out of that, it's only 17 gigawatt that purely runs on imported coal. Rest all others just blend it like 10%, 8 to 10% is usually the blending. Blending means that 10% is imported coal, rest all is domestic coal. Even NTPC does that. So, but in the past years, we have seen this attempt several times. This year also, that India has been trying to, phase out imported coal. We will have zero imported coal policy. Sounds really good on paper that why would you import so much coal when you have so much production? But the point is that then that demand that is met through imported coal shifts on domestic coal. And we do not have a plan to ramp up that how would you meet that that blank that is there with that. So this is exactly what happened. Power demand shot up because the economy rebounded post the second wave. Obviously festivals are lined up September end in India. So demand shot up. Imported coal plants were not running or were running at very low PLF. And when prices shot up, they all stopped importing. NTPC had stopped importing coal for a year now. So there was no imported coal. So even that deficit that was created was to be met by domestic coal. Some of these plants which had to blend shifted on domestic 100% capacity, and imported coal plants were not running. For instance, there are 3 imported coal-based power plants in Gujarat, which is Tata Mundra, Adani Mundra, and SR Salaya. The problem with these plants is that they are very, very efficient to run, but no one buys power from them because for 10 years they are in a legal tussle that at what price they should be selling power. So what the government then resorted to is that chalo koi nahi, now you can sell in merchant. So these last minute pit stop measures don't help in any way. So just to answer your question, sorry I digressed a bit, but the international prices did have a bearing, but very small. So we cannot relate the whole energy crisis that's happening in China or Europe to what's happening in India. But yeah, it had a little bit of bearing. Coming to gas, no gas power plants runs in India, but just again because of the high cost, we do not have any domestic gas supply. Imported gas is costly, and no state is ready to buy that costly electricity. So that's another reason that gas is not there, and it is a big problem which we can discuss in detail going forward.
That's great. I mean, just to follow up, because I have to ask this question. I had not planned this question, but I will ask this question because you provoked me. What happened to captive coal mines? Like, are they not able to ramp up production? Why is it? I mean, of course, Coal India produces everything and, 80% plus, but why are the captive owners not able to ramp up and help in this demand supply shortage?
Can I take that up for now?
Yes.
So, captive plants, most of them are, tangled in getting clearances. They are still stuck with getting several environment, and there is a lot of clearances that need to be taken. But at the same time, it's not that simple. We cannot just put the blame on them or it seems like that they are putting the blame on the government system, trying to insinuate that the system is so complicated, you need to have so many clearances and we are not getting that. But it's not that simple. It cannot be that, because if they were really eager in production, in producing coal, they would have done that. Possibly the demand, they did not see the demand coming up. And it is indeed a fact that there is a sudden spurt in demand in the recent times. But usually over the years, the demand is tepid. It's not really great. So possibly the captive plants don't see any benefit in rushing themselves in starting production. But at the same time, some of the captive plants, like which we are calling it captive, but they are state-run plants and mostly by NTPC. So the NTPC plants, the data shows that the captive production in April-September increased 35% year on year this year. But because of a lower base, we see a higher percentage increase. But the production in volumes is not very high, so it's not going to help in a big way. But they should have been helping, because when the government came up with these auctions 5 years, 6 years back, they had promised or they had claimed that this is the solution for all the problems, and it's not happening that way. So captive producers, I mean, there should be, I think the government should look into the mind by mind basis and going to the developer and asking them, what is wrong with you? Why are you not starting production? But I don't see that happening because of the demand. They don't see a demand. I'm not very sure if the current, quote unquote crisis would, encourage them to start producing, because I think this is a short term phenomenon, and after December or January, maybe the demand will go down again, and things will return to normal and they'll continue lagging in their operations. And on top of that, there is this whole international pressure on coal being the villain, and you start producing coal, then you are tagged as like the bad guy. You get difficult. It's getting more difficult by the day to get loans and capital access and many other such problems, because if you're a coal producer, so possibly that also has some kind of bearing in the whole situation.
Okay, excellent. So we have covered that there was increase in power demand. We have covered that supply was not able to meet, or logistics was an issue during monsoon. But I'm wondering, like, if power demand was the issue, what were other sources? Why couldn't we harness other sources? Like be it gas or hydro. Anupam, again, I will go back to you for this question. Why can't like renewables or even like our solar, like which is considered a big sector now, or wind or gas or hydro meet this demand?
So yes, so the what's called the panacea, the renewables. I can't really say the renewables failed miserably, because renewables production, as the data says, in April September was 15% year-on-year rise. But that again is it comes from a lower base. And even after raising production by 18%, it's not really enough in volume terms to meet the power demand. But at the same time, with the renewables increased production, coal power plants increased production by 19%. Now, the interesting thing to note is the coal capacity right now stands at 208 gigawatt, which recorded 1% rise in megawatt terms. While renewables, they recorded 15% rise in megawatt terms. So you increase capacity by 15% and you get output rise of 18%. Fair enough. But coal capacity increases by 1%, but production rises by 19%. So it's time to look at coal in a different light. I mean, one should stop vilifying coal. At least in India, which is coal is still the cheapest form of reliable energy, and we have abundant source within the country. And talking of hydro, it depends a lot on the water supply and the water levels in the rivers. So the hydro generation was down by 4% in April, September. So that I don't think much can be done about it. And there are a lot of under construction hydro plants, but they're also stuck in a lot of challenges like environmental clearances and other problems regarding their construction. Gas, we really can't help because the prices are prohibitive, because it's mostly import-based prices, and the domestic gas, the cheaper domestic gas that we get, which was being sold at $1.8 per MMBTU. So the allocation of that domestic gas is already complete, and most of it goes to the CGD plants and a few gas power plants. So the very few gas power plants that run in the country basically get the fuel from this allocation from domestic APM, which is the administered price mechanism. So they get the gas from APM plants, which helps them running. So there was a 25% dip in gas production in April, September. Last year, interestingly, few gas power plants were able to operate at a decent PLF because the gas prices internationally had come down. And the gas plants which are based in Gujarat, near the western coast, so they had access to cheap natural gas, so they could run their plants. But on the contrary, the other gas plants which are lying in the eastern coast, they are very far from the western import terminals. So the transportation cost of getting that cheap gas, with internationally cheap gas, when it comes to them, the landed price for them becomes prohibitively high, and doesn't make sense for them to generate power from that. So gas plants are stuck because of that.
That's great. So let's move on. Shreya, coming to you, you recently wrote a story in the Business Standard, and I will quote from that story. During the peak power demand season of summer, four states, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Rajasthan, defaulted on payments to Coal India Limited for their state owned power units. CIL in turn regulated the coal supply to these states. And then you also explain that the center blames partially these states for the power crisis. Can you explain what happened?
This country is full of ironies, and I'll explain that in two instances. UP and these states that you mentioned, UP, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu is a repeated offender. They never pay. They do not pay the generating company. They do not pay Coal India. And same happened with Uttar Pradesh. They delayed the payment to Coal India. Coal India later clarified that no, the payment was cleared. We then started the supply and everything. But then that gap is created, in the supply, which is then reflected in your total stock. And then when demand rises, you do not have enough coal stock. Now, as we were talking, there is a tweet by Shrikant Sharma, who happens to be the power minister of Uttar Pradesh. It's in Hindi. I'll just translate it directly into English. And he has written to electricity consumers. He has written that to maintain regular supply at night, UP government is purchasing power at 17 rupees per unit. And he has said that we are purchasing costly power of 17 rupees per unit. So please do not use unnecessary electrical appliances. Save electricity so that we can give enough electricity to villages and poor. Now, this is a state which does not pay Coal India in time. This is a state which does not pay central gencos and private generating companies on time. They have been defaulting on payment. This is a state whose distribution company is making losses, who is suffering operational losses. And then you are buying power at 17 rupees per unit in the spot market when the crisis has arisen. This is the irony that I mentioned earlier. if you regularize your payments to, say, Coal India or to NTPC, a crisis like this will not emerge. Why would NTPC not, supply power to someone who is paying them on time? Or why would Coal India regulate supply? So this is what leads to a crisis later. There is a shortage. You know that there are peak months coming in. By now, you can see that it is in a scattered monsoon. And everyone in every department knows that, what happens when there is a delayed monsoon or scattered monsoon. Transport would be delayed, mining would be delayed. And I would here also like to point out that since October last year, Coal India had been asking a lot of power plants to, keep up a stock. But most of these power plants did not, to an extent. And Anupam would know, senior officials have told us that they do not want to stock up coal for reasons best known to them. So, this is the forward planning that is missing. People don't realize, or I don't think they realize, these state governments, that if you keep on missing out on your payments, this leads to a crisis later. You have pit stop measures, but that pit stop measures I end up paying. I am a taxpayer. It's a 17 rupees per unit will reflect on my electricity bill somehow. I am a non-subsidized consumer, or industries. In a way, if you look at a larger picture, most of this cost of high electricity is then paid by industries. And then these state governments think that why do industries do not come to our state? Why would they? You are charging them 8, 9, 10 rupees per unit. So it's a vicious circle, which is, I don't think, which is realized, that a slight 2 month, 3 months delay in payment leads to this. It's someone who is paying, and that someone is the taxpayer. So I think it's not fair to not have a forward planning. So yeah, some states do have, and I think those are the lessons that these defaulters should learn from.
Anupam, just a follow up to what Shreya says. First of all, do you agree with her? And second of all, if you agree with her, what stops an Uttar Pradesh or a Maharashtra from doing these payments and stocking this coal? Like, what is the issue here?
Right. Yeah, I agree with Shreya largely, but one point I am not sure if that is correct, because she said, actually brings to your question, and this leads to your question, addressing your question only. So Shreya said that it ends up the consumer paying higher prices. So now the problem is, it is not necessarily that, because the regulators, which are mostly driven by the state governments, the regulators do not pass through the higher core tariffs, which leads to higher losses for discoms. Now, higher losses of discoms disables them from paying to generators, the NTP, the CPSU plants, the central government plants, the private players, even their state-owned generators, their own state's generators. State-owned gencos of UP had under recoveries or outstanding dues of around 12,000 crore, if I'm not wrong. It was a huge amount till at June end. Now, since they have these dues from their discoms, the gencos could not pay Coal India. So they are not getting coal. Yeah, it's a circle that goes on round and round, because it's a payment issue. And interestingly, what I think also contributed to the current shortage scenario is Coal India putting its foot down this time and said that you clear our dues, and after that we will resume normal regular supply. Right now, all those payment issues are suspended and they are getting supply in any way. But 2-3 months back, they were not getting the supply also on the state-run gencos because of payment issues. Now, because the payment issues come from the payment issues of the discoms, and the discoms payment issues come from the tariffs not rising, tariffs not being raised appropriately. But at the end of the day, of course, I will definitely agree with Shreya, because it hurts the end consumers. Because the industrial tariffs, the industrial and commercial consumers, they take the biggest hit whenever there is a rise in prices. Even if the prices are not increased and the regulator thinks before the elections that no, we should not put a burden on the consumers, it affects the discoms, and the discoms are then unable to upgrade their infrastructure or even maintain the basic infrastructure, which leads to power shortage, power cuts, and things like that. So it's of course a cycle which at some point boils down to money.
And it then leads to reform schemes, which is given by the center. The money keeps going in, and again, that money is whose money? So again, it's all come back to the janta. So
Completely, yes.
That's great. So, I mean, we talked a lot about like, role of state governments, a little bit about discoms, the role of Gencos. But what about Coal India? I'm sure there is some fault with Coal India. Like they're not pure. So, like maybe when you compare to others, maybe their fault is lesser. But are they at fault at all here? Or, I mean, today I saw that they have put out a tweet video and they're circulating that video bursting the myths of this power crisis. So I would like actually both of you to respond to this. Maybe we'll start with Anupam first about, do you think Coal India can be blamed for this crisis? If yes, to what extent?
Right. So for specifically this crisis, I don't think Coal India can be blamed because they had ample stock, March end 100 billion tons of stock. They were repeatedly asking the power plants to stock up, which they did not. The monsoons make it impossible to run operations. We cannot blame Coal India for not being able to swim in the mines and dig out coal during the monsoons. So this time, I mean, at least for this crisis, I don't think Coal India should be blamed, but they are of course to be, because they never meet their production targets. I mean, they may be increasing production. I mean, there is a 6% rise in Coal India production. They are batting their own backs because of that. But it's not meeting their target. They have a production target which they fail to meet or achieve every year. I mean, I don't think they have been meeting their targets anytime, at least in the recent past. So yes, and Coal India has been promising to improve their supply infrastructure, like the first mile connectivity projects and things like that. They are doing them, but they should have done them long back. And they cannot save themselves by saying that, you see, we are doing it. You have been doing it for the last 10 years. You should have been done it by you. We should have completed them by now, and we should have been looking at newer problems. That would have been more interesting to see newer problems even after they finish those. But these are age-old problems, and I don't think Coal India should be let off scot-free completely.
Shreya, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I more or less agree. The problem with Coal India is that Coal India is burdened with so many targets. I think if I would have been in Coal India, I would be very confused. Once you ask that I should be producing 1 billion ton, then you open up the sector and give mines to private companies. Then when I start producing 1 billion ton, then there is no demand. Then when I have surplus coal and I ask others to stock up, they do not. Then when it's raining and I am on a holiday, annual holiday that I take, all hell breaks loose in the country. And then I am blamed that, oh, there is no coal. In middle of all this, Coal India is not able to increase prices also, by the way. What is happening in China is not happening in India because Coal India maintains a normative price. They do not link it to the market prices. Had they been, I am telling you, these states would have made regular payments. Because September May, Coal India would have decided we'll increase the price. Then what would have these states done? They would have stocked up when the price was less. So that is a problem with Coal India, and that should be resolved. It's a commercial entity. It doesn't function like a commercial, or it is not, let loose to function like a commercial entity. It's an entity completely governed by government policy, which I think is very unfair to their revenues and profits. They could have, but it's a PSU at the end of the day, so don't expect much. There are people who have been pointing out how much dividend Coal India is doing, and it's a cash cow, so government keeps doing disinvestment and stake sale and all that. For that matter, Coal India's stake sale is stuck because their share price is in a bad position. No one is ready to do stake sale. So Coal India, I think, is a problem because it's not treated like a commercial entity, and it's been so many years. It should be. That will solve a lot of problems. Like Anupam said, that this time Coal India just put its foot down. You pay money, else I'm regulating the coal. So I think it needs to have a much more stronger spine.
Right. Or somebody should allow it to have a stronger spine. Okay, that's great. Moving on. Again, I think let's start with Shreya this time. So, ministries of coal and power have jointly decided to draft a monthly coal supply program for thermal power units to keep a normative like 40 million ton stock cumulatively at power units by end March. So, this is like, how do we solve the crisis going forward? How is that going to work? Can you explain that mechanism, Shreya?
Basically it's a little bit of changes in the accounting of this whole process and a bit on stocking up. So for now what happens is that how data of coal stock is collected, that Central Electricity Authority, which is a technical arm of Ministry of Power, looks at that how many days of coal is left with a particular unit, and that data is publicly available. On the basis of that, me and Anupam are making headlines that how many days of coal is left. So now Ministry of Power is saying that, let's change this. Let's maintain a stock. Let's keep a floor stock that should mandatorily be there. So it says that 40 million ton of an average stock should be there at thermal power units by March end. Why March is chosen? Because January to March is a very high production month for Coal India first. Second, post March, summer months kick in, so summer demands kick in, which is followed by monsoon months when Coal India supply is hit. So that's the plan for now. And this is being done to, I think, get thermal units also in line, as because they do not stock up. Rather, there is no rule for them to stock up. It's on their whim, it's on their need, it's on their demand. So they have been said that to mandatorily stock up this much amount of coal. How many units are functional at PL, whatever operating ratio they work on, and what is their signed amount of coal is different unit to unit. But that would be done, calculation would be done unit by unit, so that on an average, the thermal power units across the country would have 40 million ton of coal by March. I think, on the look of it, it's a good idea that there would be coal stock available at thermal power units. And if they do not have, then they have no reason to cry them. So there is a stock available. And I think Coal India has very confidently said also that they would be very comfortable in supplying this much amount of coal. So after March, we'll know what happens to that. But I think it's a very interesting approach, very different approach to how things were happening for these many years. And, it's not something unique. Coal stocking norms keep changing. Government has been changing. They changed it 4 to 5 years back as well, given on the situation. But this is a very interesting idea because this puts a little bit of responsibility on thermal units as well. So I think it would be interesting to see how it goes forward.
Okay, it's just there's so many layers to this coal and power story. So I want to unpack one more layer, which is we hear these like exorbitant like power prices in spot markets. So can you explain that phenomena, Anupam? And like, do you think some generators, power generators, are profiting from this crisis?
I don't think I can call it profiteering per se because a lot of power plants which sell in the market, they do not have PPAs. They do not have any contracts, fixed contracts to sell to. They don't have fixed consumers. So they keep selling in the power market. So in the rest of the year, they sell at very nominal prices of 2 rupees, 3 rupees. So they are not profiteering. So they are making losses at that time. So we don't blame them when they are making losses. And this whole structure of the market is designed for these power plants to make some profit when there is a crisis. So I really wouldn't blame them. But yes, very interestingly, the Power Ministry came up with a statement a few days back saying that states which are selling power in the market, in the spot market, they shouldn't do that and they'll be penalized in some form or the other. And that is where the profiteering part comes in. Few states, they have oversupply. Their demand is not high and they have comfortable coal stocks. When they saw that the power market's prices are high, they decided to sell in the market, which can be called as profiteering. But I'm not sure if that's the right term because you have made the market for such reason. The market exists for people to take benefit out of it. So I don't think it's right to vilify them. So when you're coming up with a market, you be open. So you follow the tenets of market economy. But yes, things are happening. So few states are selling there, few power plants are also selling there. But to be fair on their part, on them, they usually sell at much lower prices during the rest of the year when there is no demand hike.
And I want to highlight another irony here. Like Anupam mentioned, that why is profiteering is being vilified. This government has been planning to have a very open market for both coal and power. Coal minister has gone on record to say that coal should be available for any and everyone to buy. Why have these fuel supply agreements and everything? Jisko jitta coal chahiye, he said that. That should be available. Whatever amount coal anyone needs, it should be available. It's like an open market. Same is being tried in power sector. There are reforms, there are regulations that the Central Electricity Regulator is working on, where there would be an open market. We anyway have a mesh of power network grid, and it's very easy for supply and demand of power to be managed with. So when this is being planned, such notices of profiteering and things like that, they sound very weird. When you're planning a very open market, something on the likes of how European market works, that you can buy from wherever you want to, given your demand and prices and everything. I think such statements should not come. You should rather, work towards having an open market.
Okay, excellent. Let's talk about another set of players here. I mean, and this is something I saw in the WhatsApp university, so take it with a grain of salt. But some people send me some like WhatsApp saying that, people who are importing coal and then selling, so importers of coal, they are also profiting by buying prices at international, market and then putting like more premium on that and then selling it at even more costlier price to the domestic, buyers. Is that true? And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
So this is what I have been hearing also from the WhatsApp university. So I am not really sure about the facts and the data, but it's the same logic. So what's wrong with that? Because these are the people who make profit during crisis, and it's nothing. And during the rest of the year, when nobody imports coal, they are not making any money. So this is the time, if they are making money, I'm not very sure. And I think that the large the power plants, they import themselves because they have their own channels and their own networks. They know enough of the market. They know more than us how the market is working, and they can anticipate. So if they were to import coal, they would look for the best prices. So they wouldn't be buying from the local traders if they found out that the prices are higher and they have access to cheaper costs. So I'm not very sure about the facts. But theoretically speaking, this is my stance.
Shreya, do you have anything on this?
More or less the same, and I think Anupam is right. These power plants have their own channels, and I believe I do not exactly have the data set here, but I believe I did read in international copies that imports had stopped long before crisis started happening here. Because these people do have a mechanism to look at the prices, and prices were inching up, and coal imports did stop in India. It stopped, yeah, almost paused for a while. So I think these people had a bit of idea for that. So I'm not sure what is the basis of that information.
Okay, very good to dispel some of these myths, even if we don't know. It's good to lay it out for the audience that there's no evidence on these various other WhatsApp university facts that are floating around. Okay, so this is a question again to both of you. So maybe we can start this time with Shreya and then we'll come to Anupam. So, let's think about the big picture. This is not really a new crisis, right? And Anupam, you started by describing them. This is a cyclical phenomena that kind of happens post monsoon every year. And government of India says that basically, or maybe they have changed the stand as we are speaking, but they were saying that there is no crisis. On the other hand, some state governments are crying that it's a crisis. Uh, State governments blame generators, somebody blames Coal India. So there's kind of a lot of a blame game happening. I remember that when I was a reporter, one of my first stories was covering the coal crisis in 2010 or 9 or something like that. So, like, let's think big picture. What is the solution? How do we, go about addressing this problem so that we can break this cyclical crisis that may again be in the news next year after monsoon?
I'm able to answer that question. I qualify to be an IS and sit in either Ministry of Coal or Power for sure. But I think having healthy state distribution company or healthy state power utilities is the first step in that direction. If they're healthy, if they make profits, if they have money, I think a lot of problem would be solved. And by that, I not mean only coal, a lot of problems in our power supply chain. So fingers crossed for the new discom reforms scheme for that. So that is one point that, our state utilities should have money, should have a plan. These two things are very much needed. At the central level, we do see a seamless working happening. Like when this crisis broke, the power ministry and everyone, it took them barely 24 hours to, come up with quick pit stop solutions. But these pit stop solutions should not come up. There should be a seamless process that should start from states paying the power generating companies or state generating utilities paying Coal India on time, and coal supply should be seamless. And obviously now everyone knows which are the months. Climate change does have an impact on the monsoon thing, but IMD and everyone gives a great forecast. Barring that, I think there should be a plan with every state, then when and how they should pay, and have a stock of coal ready before this problematic season kicks in. So again, as we had discussed earlier, it all boils down to money. So when discoms are making money, when the state utilities are making money, this problem could be avoided. And I think we missed addressing this, but the financial of the state governments this year are also in a stretch because of COVID. A lot of state governments are facing this issue. So you never know, the payment delays were also because of that, because in the priority list, this clearly comes very low right now for the state governments. And going forward also, we would not see much investment in these sectors. So that is one reason. So I sympathize with the state's government for that. But had they been running a tighter ship before pandemic came, they would have been in a better position.
Okay, Anupam, your thoughts on this?
As Shreya said, it's complex and there is no straight answer to that. But I think one can start by improving the state-center relationships. I mean, this stance of center versus the states or the states versus the center, it doesn't help anyone. At least not the people. I mean, it might help a few people, but not the common people. But so we can start with that, and we can start monitoring the power plants more, because I am not sure if the power plants will be penalized for not maintaining stock in spite of warnings or in spite of notifications. And another interesting point, I think, is the cost plus power plants belonging to NTPC and others as well. So while calculating the cost of power, they take the inventory for 22 days. So the costs are calculated keeping in mind there is an inventory stock of 22 days. So, but when there is a stock of 2 days, so there is a 20-day inventory cost from which they are making profit, because their tariffs are being calculated keeping in mind 22 days of stock. So this can be called as profiteering. So I think there should be a mechanism to monitor that. I think that will make the power plants more cautious, and this 40 million ton of stock which Shreya talked about, which the government is planning for March. I mean, these are good on paper. So right now there is a directive. This CEA has a mandate of keeping stocks at power plants, but evidently the power plants did not follow these mandates. So what is the guarantee that even after the government comes up with this plan of 40 million ton, what is the guarantee that the power plants would follow that? So there should be a monitoring mechanism, and also penalty structure to penalize these plants if they're not following them. So I think that also can contribute in helping improving the situation.
I like the carrot and stick policy that you are alluding to. I think that works in many situations. Let's move on to the next question. And this is again a question to both of you. This time we'll start with Anupam and then go to Shreya. So India has an ambitious plan for renewable energy, right? Like 450 gigawatt by 2030. We have already reached 100 gigawatt. Aim is to get to 175 by next year. Do you think so much renewable energy can replace coal? Is the current crisis in any way indicates we cannot part away from coal? Um, and what happens to so much RE when it's fed in the grid? If it's not matched by various other reforms. I know, Anupam, you have a very strong opinion on this topic, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, this crisis, if I can call it a crisis, absolutely shows the relevance of coal in India because, as I said, there was a 15% rise in capacity, but the generation was not enough. Instead, what it did was it confused the planners and the demand projections because we don't know when the sun is going to shine or the wind is going to blow. And storage costs are prohibitively high. So, of course, we cannot say that the lowest cost of renewables is 1.99 rupees per unit. It is not. You have to add the balancing cost and also ideally the storage cost, which makes it much higher than coal. So, and we have abundant resources with inside the country. If we are talking about energy independence, we cannot move away from coal. So yesterday a report came out from CEEW. So they had projected that if we are to meet the net zero target by 2050, if there is a commitment, we need more than 5,000 gigawatt of solar plants. 1 megawatt of solar plant needs 4 acre of land. So 5,000 would need, so 1,000 into 5,000 into 4 acres of land. So, let's see where we get that land from, one. And storage costs, if the storage costs come down and if the global north, the developed countries really think that no, India is a polluting country, India should get away from coal, fine, let them sponsor the storage cost, or at least let them sponsor the storage technologies, not with technologies, give us the storage to support that RE. I don't think there should be a problem with installing RE capacity if there is appropriate storage. We don't have that as of now, and we are sitting on 300 billion tons of coal reserve. It doesn't make any sense just to cater to the quote unquote white world.
Okay, Shreya.
I would like to point out that this crisis, as Anupam said, this so-called crisis comes at a very opportune time for India, as we people who will be going to COP will give this example and say, sorry, we cannot part away from coal. So those guys should be thankful that this particular thing happened. Though I don't know for sure what India's stand would be, but still, we have maintained that we cannot part away from coal. We just cannot. This is a situation where on an average, and this is a very ballpark data because India does not have data on how much power supply is, power consumption data we do not have. But this, I am assuming by government standards, 16 to 18 hours of supply in villages and 20 to 22 hours of supply in urban areas. This situation has happened now. If you're looking at a 24/7 power supply situation, I don't think any amount of renewable at this point of time, or even in the coming 5, let me stick my neck out and say in the next decade also, cannot support the kind of demand that will come in this country. You have to keep in mind that there are households that have been electrified, so-called on paper, but yet are not getting any supply. There are rural households where demand will increase, definitely increase. As India urbanizes, and we discussed this in one of our episodes at the India Energy Hour with Siddharth, that, how villages are getting urbanized with more electric equipment and everything. So You cannot say that there would be a demand projection, all these numbers. Even if we are looking at a very normative growth of 6 to 8%, it's huge. 6 to 8% growth in demand is huge, and I think coal only would meet that. And when this pressure comes from Western countries to green our economy and everything, sounds really good. We definitely should. But then, as Anupam said, give us money. Give us money for carbon capture, give us money for clean coal technologies or for storage. And rightly so, this 1.99 tariff, what should I do with it when I cannot supply power? And Sandeep, the other part of your question, that what happens when so much renewable is fed in the grid, what would I do with just 4 hours of solar power supply? Will it be able to meet any demand? No, it cannot. What will I do with 3 months of wind power? And then obviously the cost of base and peaking power and everything is there. So yeah, going forward, obviously coal should be a mainstay, and this is I'm digressing a little bit, but why are we not investing in peaking power such as gas and hydro? I know hydro is a very, very costly and risky proposition, but why are we not investing in gas? It's a clean fuel. There are stranded projects here which were supposed to run on domestic gas, but it ran out. There was a scheme to support these gas power plants, which for 3 years has disappeared. There's no money into this. There's no investment happening. Had there been gas here, 12 to 16,000 megawatt of gas based capacity, the moment you ramp it up, you meet this peak power that is there. No, I think when we are rushing towards this particular big numbers of renewables, and by renewables, India's definition only solar and wind, we are missing out completely on other sources. And by other sources, I'll also include decentralized solar, which has to be there. He gave such a humongous calculation on how much land is needed for solar. Why cannot we, deploy solar on our rooftops? Or there's this scheme for solarizing agriculture pumps, kusum and all that. Why are we not doing that? If you look at Germany model where rooftop and decentralized solar came first, those are good models to deploy in India, where land and real estate is such an issue. I've digressed a lot, so let me just shorten it and say that first, no, RE cannot replace coal. It can just play a supplementary role. Two, we are giving much more credit to solar and wind than we should have, and going forward, we shouldn't. Third, we really, really need investment in other energy sources: hydrogen, methanol, gas, LNG, CNG, everything. India is a resource rich country. We have such good import channels. We have infrastructure capabilities. We have some of the India's leading companies are into power generation and in fuels. We just need to make these resources available and not rush towards a magic number in solar and wind. And I think that should take care of us for a while we meet our climate change targets.
I think nuclear has a very interesting role to play here, because it addresses a lot of challenges, and it's clean, and it has a negative perception. But I am told that the technology has improved and it's much safer now. And if the scale increases, the prices will also come down. But it is sustainable and can play a big role. But I think that should also be kept in the picture.
This is great, Shreya and Anupam. Thank you so much. I think you both really explained the who, the what, the where, the why, and the how of this crisis. And I think at a time where many people, many of our listeners are wondering about what this crisis is all about. So I really appreciate both your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sandeep.
Thank you for inviting me.
For more information about the podcast, visit us online at www.101reporters.com/podcast/the_India_energy_hour. You can also reach out to us on social media and send us your comments and suggestions. My Twitter handle is at Sandeep Pai with a double I, and Shreya's Twitter handle is at Shreya_J.